Hello everyone, today we're going to be going over the entire multiple choice section of the August 2019 Algebra 1 Regents exam. Starting with question number 1, which asks, Brian's hockey team is purchasing jerseys. The company charges $250 for a one-time setup fee and $23 for each printed jersey. Which expression represents the total cost of X number of jerseys for the team? Guys, this is simple. All you have to do is just construct the expression that represents the situation, right? So if you have $23 for each printed jersey, or per each printed jersey, and X is the number of jerseys, you're going to have 23X, right? Why? Because X represents the number of jerseys, right? And 23 is the price. So you match those two up. And then it says that the company charges $250 for a one-time setup fee, right? This is independent of the amount of jerseys that you get. So you have 23X plus 250 as your answer. Moving on to number 2. It asks which table represents a function. Guys, remember, a function is what? Function is something that is a relationship where each x value has only one y output. Only one, right? So knowing this, we can eliminate all of these choices. Why? Because here it's saying that when the x input of 2 gives you an output of 3, and it also gives you an output of 1, right? That's wrong. Here, it's saying that an x input of -3 gives you an output of 0, and x input of -3 also gives you an output of 2. That's two different outputs for the same input. That's wrong. Here, it's saying that each x value has only one y output. Each x input only has one y output. This is wrong, because here you have 4 inputs of 1, and they all have 4 different y outputs, right? That's wrong. 4 is the only expression that follows the rule we just defined. Each x value here has only one output. That's all. Number 3 asks which expression is equivalent to 2x squared minus 1 plus 3x times x minus 4. Two ways you can do this. Number 1, you could plug in x equals 2 for all these expressions and see which value matches, or you could just expand it, which I think is much faster. Here we have 2 times x squared minus 1 plus 3x times x minus 4, right? Expand this 2 times x squared is 2x squared minus 2 plus 3x squared minus 12x. Add like terms, combine like terms, 5x squared minus 12x minus 2 is your answer. That's all. The value of x that satisfies the equation is what? Guys, two ways you can do this. Number 1, you could plug in these values for x and see which one is equal to 4 over 3, or you could just cross multiply. Here I have one fraction on this side, I have another fraction on this side. I have one fraction on both sides, which means I can cross multiply, which is what I'm going to do to solve this problem. I'm going to rewrite it. I'm going to draw my arrow to see what I have to multiply. I have to multiply by 15 and 4, so 15 times 4 is 60, and I'm going to write an equal sign. Next, I'm going to multiply x plus 10 by 3, so 3x plus 10, this is equal to 60, is equal to 3x plus 30, subtract 30 on both sides. You get 30 is equal to 3x, x is equal to 10. Moving on. 5 says Josh graphed the function -3x minus 1 squared plus 2. He then graphed the function g of x, which is -3x minus 1 squared minus 5 on the same coordinate plane. The vertex of g of x is what? Folks, you have a graphing calculator on this test. I advise you use it to its max. Just graph it. Go into y equals, graph this, and then graph this, right? And then press graph. What you're going to be left with are these two lines. Let me just change your color for the second one. Right? So this is g of x, right? And this is f of x. So what happens? What changed? Was it shifted 7 units to the left? No. Was it shifted 7 units to right? No. Right? This is the vertex, by the way. It's the peak. Right? Was it shifted 7 units above the vertex? No. It was shifted 7 units below the vertex of f of x. See? 7 units below, right? This is the only one that talks about it being shifted below. Pretty easy. Number 6 says a survey that was given to 12th grade students of West High School to determine their location for their senior class trip. The results are shown below. To the nearest percent, what percent of boys chose Niagara Falls? So we're going to be basing our answer off of this box only, right? Here's 56 boys chose Niagara Falls, 74 chose Darien Lake, and 103 chose New York City. So how are we going to solve this? Well, we have to find the total number of boys, which is going to be 56 plus 74 plus 103. Let me just plug that into my calculator. That's 103. That's equal to 233. So there's 233 boys who responded in total, and of them, only 56 chose Niagara Falls, right? So now we're left with 56 over 233, which is equal to roughly 24%. Which type of function is shown in the graph below? This is an exponential function. Why? A linear function would be just a straight line, right? Absolute value would be a V shape, right? And a square root function would be the opposite. It would be this, but like that. That'd be a square root function. If you were confused, if you didn't know how to do this, I would just advise you to press y equals and then graph a linear function, graph a square root function, graph an absolute value function. That's all. Moving on to number 8, it says that it asks the expression of 6x squared minus 81 is equivalent to what? I think it's important for you to remember this one rule. A squared minus b squared is equal to a plus b times a minus b. What this means is whenever you have two perfect squares, right? Perfect square, 16 is a perfect square, 81 is a perfect square. You could rewrite it as the square root of a plus the square root of b and the square root of a minus the square root of b, right? So 16x squared, that's our a, 16 is our a, and 81 is our b, right? So radical 16 is 4 plus what? Radical 81 is, what's that? That's 9. So 4x plus 9 times 4x minus 9, right? So 4x minus 9, 4x plus 9. That's all. Just remember that rule, right? So the owner of a the owner of a landscaping business wants to know how much time on average his workers spend mowing the lawn, which is the most appropriate rate to which to calculate his question, right? So is it lawns per employee? No. Is it lawns per day? No, right? Because he wants to spend his workers mowing one lawn, right? It's probably going to be hours per lawn. If you think about it, is it employees per lawn? No, right? He wants to know the amount of time on average his workers spend mowing one lawn. So it should be hours per lawn, because that gives you how many lawns you get per hour. That's the amount of time required for one lawn, right? This one doesn't give you any measure of time. This one also doesn't give you any measure of time. It's just telling you how many lawns per employees. And number 2, lawns per day. He wants to know how much time on average you spend per day. That would be how many lawns they mow daily, right? That's not really time. So yeah. So number 10 asks, a ball is thrown in the air from the top of a building. The height is h of t of the ball above the ground. T seconds after it was thrown can be modeled by h of t is equal to negative 16t squared plus 64 plus 80. How many seconds after being thrown will the ball hit the ground? All you have to do here, h of t is the height of the ball, right? So guess what? 0, right? What is the height? If we think about this on a graphing plane, when it hits the ground, what will our ground be? Our ground will be when y is equal to 0, right? And we know that h of t is the same thing as saying y equals. So we set the entire equation equal to 0. Right? And then we just solve, for t. T is going to be 5. When t is 5, this is all equal to 0. That's all you need to do. Number 11 asks, which equation is equivalent to y is equal to x squared plus 24x minus 18? So let's go ahead. Let's go solve that. The first thing I would try is just factoring via FOIL and just trying to do it regularly. Right, so is there anything that multiplies into 18 that adds into 24? No, there isn't, right? Because that's 9 and 2, that's 3 and 6. I don't think there's anything that could really add up to 24, right? So because we can't FOIL normally, we're gonna have to do something called completing the square, which we're gonna take our b value. We're gonna go b over 2 squared, negative b over 2 squared, right? And then we're gonna add that to the end, right? So in other words, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna have y squared plus 24x, right? We're gonna set aside the negative 18. Next, we're going to take 24, which is our b value, divided by 2 and square it, right? So 24 divided by 2 squared is going to be 144. So we're going to add 144, right? And now we're going to factor this out as usual, right? So this turns out, what multiplies into 144, what adds into 24? It's 12 times 12, right? 12 times 12 is 144. If you add it, is equal to 24. So then you can just factor that out at normal. This is going to give you x plus 12 squared, right? Then you have that negative 18, right? That you put in after that. And now you also have to add that 144 that you added to the inside to the outside. That's all. So negative 18. Actually, what you have to do really is, because you added 144 to one side, you have to add it to the other side. So now, instead of your equation just being y, it's now y plus 144 is equal to x plus 12 squared minus 18. I need y alone, right? So I'm going to subtract 144. Negative 18 minus 144 is equal to negative 162. That's going to give you with this answer. So remember, for the completeness square, it's going to be b over 2 squared, right? You're going to add that to your b value. You're going to ignore your c value. You're going to add it on both sides, and then you're going to subtract it from both sides. That's all you have to do. It's not that hard, right? So 12 says when x times x minus 5 times x 2x plus 3 is expressed as a polynomial in standard form, which statement about the resulting polynomial is true, right? So let's express it in that way. We're going to just multiply everything else out. So x times x minus 5, that's x squared minus 5x, right? Then we're going to multiply this by 2x plus 3. We're going to have 2x cubed plus 3x squared minus 10x squared minus 15x, right? And then we're going to combine like so. So we have 2x cubed minus 7x squared minus 15x. Leading coefficient is 2. Yeah, that's it. The leading coefficient, the coefficient of the first term, and this is in standard form because it's in descending order of the thing that x is raised into the power of. The coefficient of that number is 2, right? The degree isn't 2 because it's raised to the power of 3. The number of terms is 2. No, there's 3 numbers here. There's 3 terms. And the constant term is not 2. The leading coefficient is 2. Right? Actually, we have no constant term, right? Because there's no number that doesn't have an x here. Right? So 13 says that the population of a city can be modeled by P of t is equal to 3,810 times 1.0005 to the raised to the power of 7t, where P of t is the population after t years. Which function is approximately equivalent to P of t? Right? So what do we have here? We have this. Right? And we're trying to find an equation that is equivalent to this, right? Now, notice how this is times 7t, right? So obviously, if we want to find it, this is equal to 7 years, right? And we need to find something that is equivalent to P of t. The easiest way you could ever do this is just plug in values. Plug in 2 is equal to t, t is equal to 3, and just see whichever one of these answers match up. The thing that's going to match up is 2. Another way you could do this, you could graph this. You can go y equals, you can put all of these in, right? You can graph all 5 of these, and whichever graph matches this one, that's going to be your answer. Another way you could have done this was you could have actually just multiplied 1.0005 by 7, right? Would have been the same thing. That would have been one way of actually eliminating that this 7t here, right? Because 1.005 times 7 is 1.0035. Also another way to do this, right? Just multiply the exponent by what it's actually being raised to. So number 14 says the function f of x and g of x are modeled on the set of axes below. Which value of f of x is f of x not equal to g of x, right? So what values are they equal to? Well, whenever two functions are equal to each other, they intersect, right? So they're equal to each other at this point, they're equal to each other at this point and this point, right? So whenever you think of f of x equal to g of x, think about intersection, right? So which all it's asking is which value do they not intersect at, right? So they intersect at 1, 2. They intersect at 2, right? They intersect at -1, and they intersect at -2, right? So 1, 2, and -2, -1, 1, 2. So the only value that they don't intersect at is at 0.3 right here, right? That's all. So number 15 asks, what is the range of the plot box shown below? The range is the max value minus the minimum value, right? So what's the max value? The max value is 8 minus the minimum value, which is 7, which means the range is, oh, sorry, 8 minus 1, my fault. 8 minus 1, so the max value is actually 7. There you go. That's the answer to that. And it conveniently tells you the minimum value. That's whichever value is above these this t. Right, so number 16 asks which expression is not equivalent to 2x squared plus 10x plus 12. Pretty easy way to do this is probably to plug in, just say x equals 2, plug it in whichever value does not add up to it is going to be your answer. Or you could just factor it out and see along the way. So 2x squared plus 5x plus 6, right? So now 6 is equal to 3 times 2, so now we have x equals 2x plus 3x plus 6, x plus 2, 3x plus 2, and then you have x plus 2, x plus 3 times 2, right? So automatically that's wrong, because this is equal to that, right? Next, I could expand this out. So now I have 2x plus 4 times x plus 3. Right? What's 2x plus 4 plus x plus 3 there? Right? And that I could also move this 2 to there, right? So instead of, I can have x plus 2 times 3 x x plus 3, right? And the only thing that this won't give me is 2x plus 3. Sorry, 2 times x plus 3. Guess what that's going to give me? That's going to give me x plus 2 times 2x plus 6, right? Which is right here, and that leaves us with 3, which is the only thing that this is not equivalent to. So usually, if you just if you do factor it out on your own, right, and you just look at the variations of how you factor, you could usually solve this. Otherwise, you could just write x equals 2 and just see which one doesn't match up. Number 17 tells us that the quadratic functions r of x and q of x are given below. The function with the smallest minimum value is what? Right. So the minimum value is the smallest y value. So the smallest y value of r of x is -16, right? And you can't really figure the minimum value out from here unless you use a formula, which honestly, too much work. Just go into your calculator, press y equals, and just graph it, right? So I'm going to put in x squared plus 2x minus 8 into my calculator. Then I'm going to press graph. Next, I'm going to go into second. And trace, right? Second and trace, I'm going to scroll down to where it says minimum, right? I'm going to press enter. I'm going to do, right? So here's the actual graph, right? Whenever it says left and right bound, just make sure that the vertex, right, is between your left and your right bound. That's all. So once you do all of that, left bound, right bound, and then you guess, your minimum value for this is -9, right? So the answer is the smallest minimum value is r of x, and the minimum value is -6. Sorry, -16. There. That's how you do it. Pretty easy. Number 18 says the child is playing outside. The graph below shows the child's distance d of t in yards over from home over a period of t seconds. Which interval represents the child is constantly moving closer to home? So think about it, right? What is speed, right? Speed is distance over time, right? So obviously wherever I see a slope, or wherever this line, wherever it's not a straight line, my speed is going to be changing, right? Because think about this. Let's look at the interval from 4 to 6, right? Here, he is moving 8 yards over 4 seconds, right? Well, actually, which interval represents the child constantly moving closer to home? Never mind, guys. Because this distance isn't changing over time, intervals from 4 to 6 is going to be not moving, right? And distance, this is the distance from his home. So if he's moving closer to home, right? From intervals from second 0 to 2 is going to be our answer for this problem. Right? Because think about it. If this is his distance yards from home, and it's going down, it's going closer to 4, that means he's going from 10 yards from home to 4 yards from home. He's going closer to home, right? And he's doing it at a constant speed because there's a slope, right? If speed is equal to distance over time, then the slope, right, distance is y over x, change in y, change in x, then the speed is just the slope, right? And linear things, or straight lines have a constant slope, right? So he's constantly moving at the same speed towards home. That's all. Number 19 says if a of 1 is equal to 6 and a of n is equal to 3 plus 2 times a of n minus 1 squared, then a of 2 is equal to what? Guys, this is fairly easy. All you have to do is plug in values. We know that a of 1 is equal to 6. So we're trying to find a of 2, so that's going to equal to 3 plus 2 times a of 2 minus 1, which is a of 1, right? And they gave us a of 1, which is 6. 6, and that's it. So what is 6 squared? 6 squared is 36, right? 36 times 2 is 72, and that plus 3 is 75, which is answer choice number 1. Moving on to number 20. The length of a rectangular patio is 7 feet more than its width. The area of a patio can be represented by the function what? Well, what is area? Area is length times width, right? And if it's if the length is 7 more than its width, so L has to equal to, whenever you see 7 more, think 7 plus, so W plus 7, right, is its length, right? So we can just substitute W plus 7 for L, right? So now we have W plus 7 times W. So we're going to have W squared plus 7W. Number 21 says the dolphin jumps out of the water and then back into the water. His jump could be graphed over the set of axes where x represents his time and y represents his distance over the water. The domain for this graph can be best represented using a set of what? Well, I'm going to automatically cross out real numbers, right? Because real numbers includes negative, right? You can't have a negative time. Think about it, right? If his jump could be graphed over a set where x represents his time, right? How can you represent -1 seconds? Like, what does -1 seconds mean, right? Obviously, if you're going to graph something and you're going to have time involved, you're going to have to use positive seconds, right? Time after he started swimming, right? Because -1 second simply doesn't make sense. We as people do not use that, right? Positive integers, sure, that's right, but that kind of limits you only to really whole numbers. You can have things other than positive integers. You can have 2/3 of a second. You can have 0.222 repeating of a second. That's perfectly fine, right? So it's not just whole numbers including 0. It could also be fractions, and it could also be like infinitely repeating numbers, right? So positive integers is out. Integers is out because this also includes negative numbers, and as we just said, you can't have negative seconds. So that's going to leave you with 4 positive real numbers. That's all, right? You could have 1/3 of a second, you have 2 seconds, you could have 0 seconds. Boom. That's all. Number 22 asks which system of linear equation has the same solution as the one shown above. Fairly simple problem. All you have to do, really is just find out how to isolate one specific value, right? So I'll show you how to do that. You have x minus 4 is equal to negative 10, and here you have x plus y is equal to 5. All I would do if I were you, I would just subtract these two values so to get y alone. So what's x minus x? X minus x is 0, right? What's negative 4y minus y? It's negative 5. So you have negative 5y is equal to, what's negative 10 minus 5? Negative 15. So y is equal to 3. Now that we know that what the value of y is equal to, we can just plug it back into one of those equations. That'll give us some more space to work with right here. So if we know y is equal to 3, x plus 3 is equal to 5. That means that x has to equal to 2, right? So our solution set, right? Our solution is going to be 2, 3, right? Now, don't worry, you're not going to have to do that for each and every single one of the problems here. All you have to do is now plug in x equals 2 and y equals 3 into these, and from that you can determine which one is right and which one isn't, right? So let's plug it into here, right? What's 5 times 2? 5 times 2 is 10, right? So so right here it works, right? What about here? If x is 2 and y is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. Since this solution set works for 1 has to be our answer, right? Let's look here. Negative 5y is equal to negative 5. Well, that's wrong because y is 3, so that should be negative 15. So that means 2 is wrong. Same thing goes for here. Negative 5y is equal to negative 5. If y is 3, it should be negative 15. And x is not equal to 10, right? So just first find it, solve it, and then plug it in. That's all. Which interval represents the range of the function h of x, 2x squared minus 2x minus 4? All you have to do is go into your calculator, graph it in. 2x squared minus 2x minus 4. I'm graphing it. Remember that range is all y values, right? So once you graph it, your graph is going to look something like this, right? So automatically, I know that it's going to go to infinity. But where is it stopping at? Where is it stopping at? Well, if you go back to that trace, you can go trace, second plus trace. You can then calculate what I call the minimum, set your bounds, and then press enter. And what the minimum function will tell you that, it'll tell you that this point lies at the point negative 4.5, right? So in reality, it goes from negative 4.5 to infinity, right? So we can eliminate 0.5, we can eliminate that too. We're going to be left with 3 or 4, and we're going to choose 4 because since negative 4.5 lies on the line, it has to be a part of the solution. And we signify that it's a part of the solution with these brackets, right? If 4.5 did not lie on the line, like it does here, it lies on the vertex, it lies on the line. If it didn't do that, we'd have to signify it with parentheses, which is not the case. 24 says, what is the common ratio of a geometric sequence whose first term is 5 and whose third term is 245? So geometric sequence, so you know that you're multiplying values, right? So first I'm just gonna assign place values, right? So this is 5, right? Our first term is 5, right? This is the first term. Here's our second term. Here's our third term, right? And it goes 245. So we go 1, and then we go 2. So what times 5 times that is equal to 245, right? So we could just write this as 5 times x, right? Because we're multiplying 5 times x, which is our common ratio once, and then we're multiplying that by our common ratio twice, right? So 5 times x, right? So 5 times x is equal to 245, right? It's a geometric sequence, which means we have to multiply by the common ratio for each term, right? So 5 times x, that's 1. That's how we get a of 2, and then multiply by x again. That's how we get a of 3. Right? So that's same thing as saying 5x squared is equal to 245. Now we divide by 5 on both sides. 245 divided by 5 is equal to 49. We know that x squared is equal to 49. Square root both sides. X is equal to 7. That's all, right? So we multiplied 5 by 7, and then we multiplied by 7 once more. That's how we got it. This is all 24 questions done. That's all of part 1 done. So if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please do leave them in the comments. I hope you if you would like to, if you have any suggestions for any problems that I should do in the future, or any tests that you want me to look over specifically in the future, please go ahead and leave that in the comments. If you like this video, please leave a like, and if you want more content like this in the future, feel free to subscribe. It really helps with the channel. Anyways, have a nice day. Bye bye.